Hello, everybody, and welcome to the penultimate in-person meeting of the AAS's Eclipse Task Force. I'm Debra Ross. I'm from Rochester, New York. I'm chair of our Eclipse Task Force there.
I'm chair of the Department of Physics and Astronomy at the University of Texas in San Antonio, and along with that, co-chair of the Solar Eclipse Task Force.
We want to acknowledge the tireless and unpaid efforts of Rick Feinberg, right over there. He's the man behind every curtain, honestly. So our theme, of course, is get prepared. And so I just wanted to illustrate that in Rochester, New York, we are prepared for every eventuality, where Jay Anderson's Eclipsophile website informs us that we have a 51% chance of sun at 3:20 p.m. on April 8th of 2024. But just in case not, here you go. Right? Again, prepared for everything. So we'd also like to ask Dr. James about, from right here at the, oh my gosh, New Mexico Museum of Natural History and Science, to do a little welcome to you all and a little bit of housekeeping.
Thank you. Yeah, you have to take a deep breath before you sit. Welcome to the museum. We are delighted to have you all here and be in partnership with AAS. We're delighted to be in partnership with our local coalition of organizations that many of you represent. I think it is going to take all of us working together to prepare for this and to make sure that we're giving out good information pre-eclipse, we're keeping people safe, and we have stuff organized enough for an estimated 150,000 people in Albuquerque on October 14th, who will be looking desperately for places to view the eclipse. But we also have to prepare them to do it safely. And that's the job of all of us who can offer educational programming up front. So we are also very proud to be part of the Punch Coalition. You'll hear about that a little bit more tomorrow, but it's a group of institutions all around the Four Corners states linked to several solar missions by NASA, and also linked to a very New Mexican concept, ancient and modern sun watching, and linking to the ancestral Puebloans in Chaco Canyon and today's Puebloan people who still are sun watchers, just as all of us are. So, some logistics. This is our pretty brand new state-of-the-art AV classroom, and I'm afraid I have to say the seats, not so much state-of-the-art. So do your best to keep from rocking your whole aisle back and forth, but sometimes you can't help it. Generally, we do not allow food or drinking here, but this is a special event. So we have tables set outside. We are free to bring things in here, free to take stuff into classroom 2. Just be a little careful in here, because if stuff falls between the cracks, when we push these bleachers back, it can be a problem. Classroom 2 is where we'll be doing breakout sessions. That's down the hallway and slightly jogged to your right. Also across the hallway, bathrooms, drinking fountain, water bottle filler. And if you go all the way down the big hallway, it kind of looks a little scary, like you're entering a state pen or something. You will get to the main part of the museum. And during breaks and lunch, you're absolutely welcome and encouraged to walk through the museum, look at our exhibits, and also upstairs at the far end of the building, this direction, at the exterior of the planetarium upstairs, the Punch Collaborative has activities set up for you guys to take a look at. We'll be focusing more on this tomorrow up there. You can go up and take a sneak peek. The hallway looks the way it does, by the way, because this used to be behind the scenes of the museum, and we're slowly converting it to education space. What else? I think that's pretty much it. Oh, let's see. To go upstairs for those activities, you'll have to go up the stairways or up to elevators and then head this direction, head west upstairs. Okay?
And yay, tiny groceries.
What?
Yay, tiny groceries.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Please help me thank our wonderful local caterer, Tiny Grocer. They are right here in Old Town. They have a small grocery store, an herbal shop, and do the most fantastic gourmet catering. So I highly encourage you to think about visiting. And thank you to AAS for choosing us as a site for this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to welcome everybody who's tuned in to us on Zoom today and tomorrow. And we also have some sponsors to thank. So we need to flip to next slide.
Maybe.
Maybe. And if anyone doesn't have an agenda, by the way, I'm just going to put them right down here.
Maybe I'm too far away.
There we go. Thank you so much, NASA. We have some NASA representatives here. ViewSonic Education and the National Esports Association is sponsoring tonight's reception, which is over at the Sawmill Market. And I'll explain a little bit of the logistics in just a moment. I think there's one more.
Nope, that's it.
No, okay. Logistically, so here's how today works. We have plenary sessions in here. When we have breakout sessions, you'll see them later on in the agenda. One of them will be here and one of them will be in classroom 2, a little down the hall. And lunch will be here, catered by our same fabulous caterer. At the end of the day, we'll be walking outside of the museum over to the reception. That's that Sawmill Market. So we're going to be kind of going in a little bit of a 3-sided rectangle, follow the crowd. The gift card that you have in your lanyard is a $25 food gift card. Beer, wine, and sodas going to be provided in our room on the upstairs of the Sawmill Market. And then you are free to go and buy wonderful food from many of the different vendors that's there, and you have $25 to do that. Okay, so let's, I think we can get started with plenary session 1. Our first session is about data-driven lessons learned from 2017's Eclipse. Now, when I first started working on this, one of the things that you have when you're trying to work for a long time, years in advance, to convince people to work for no money for something that's happening where in Rochester, New York's case, 3 minutes and 38 seconds, you have an uphill battle. And one of the things that really helps in that is data, impact data, actual impact data studies from when it's happened before. Now, for 2017 had their work cut out for them, right? Because we hadn't had an eclipse in a couple of decades before that, so we didn't, and life had changed. But we only have 7 years between these, the major eclipses, 6 if you count the 2023, I'm in the wrong decade. And we will not have another one in the continental US for 21 years. That number is actually really important as we're convincing people that this is a big deal. Now this, fantastic, okay. So I just have a very quick intro as part of What we've done as we've been preparing communities with all the resources that they need, is an impact, one sheet with a lot of impact studies linked. So if you go to the AAS website, eclipse.aas.org, hit resources, and then scroll down to the bottom, impact data from 2017. What you're gonna find is a page linkable to this kind of impact data. This wasn't news reports of just casual observation. Actual impact data studies regionally. Forbes did a retail spending study, and we have two major traffic studies. You'll be hearing from Jim Stack and Lori Marr to go into some more detail about what those were. But you want to be able to access those, you can print it, you can give it to people. Those numbers really, really help to describe what the impact's gonna be. And now we have a bunch of different perspectives on data and its impact. We have Jay Anderson from Eclipseophile, who's gonna talk to us about the weather. That's where I got my 51% number, which I repeat often. Kate Russo, who is the world's operation expert. She is here from Australia. Janet Ivey, she unfortunately could not be here, but she was one of the instrumental people for managing the Nashville eclipse in 2017, and she was kind enough to record a video for us. We have Kristen Erickson from NASA somewhere, and Carrie Falzone from Vertical Insight on helping you gear up your online presence to measure impact after. You got to do some stuff before in order for that to be effective. So with no further ado, can we have Jay come up first?
Everyone, I'm sure some of you are familiar with eclipseophile.com, and when I'm done here and you want gory details about the weather, you'll find them there. Now, the one thing about weather and weather forecasters is that all through your life, you've always said that you guys never get it right. Well, what I do is climatology. Climatology is never wrong.
Hey, hold the mic up.
So anyway, let's, there's the address.
It's the bottom.
Yeah, the bottom arrow.
Oh,
It's
okay.
got a little thingy on it.
All right, so here's the median cloud amount. This is 21 years of data. Shows the eclipse track on what the average cloud amount is through the month of October. And you can see quite early that it's the middle of the eclipse track that's important. In particular, Albuquerque lies pretty much in the middle of the best weather in there. Just keep that pattern in mind because I'm not really going to talk about it. You can get that on the website. So we look here at 2021's weather. And you know, it matches pretty closely what the average climatology was at that time. It's cloudy up in the northwest over Oregon, but not completely cloudy. And then once you get over the Cascade Mountains, it actually opens up quite a bit. There's wave clouds over top of Nevada, which is a relatively common feature there, but there's lots of open sky between them. And then once you get across into the Four Corners states, it suddenly opens up, especially on the south side of the track. The only thing that's a little different here is that it's not quite as cloudy in Texas as the average cloud. So the thing is that if you're planning for this eclipse, just mentally think about how you would handle it if you were traveling, if you were accounting for people who were traveling from, say, coming in from the east to the west, or even more from the northeast, where there's a little bit of weather. How would you handle that? This would be a pretty easy eclipse day to handle. However, you get into this 2016 weather, you see that Northwest has really got a lot of problems. People in Oregon, are they going to be traveling? Are they going to handle wave clouds in Nevada? Wave clouds are stable. Once they form, they pretty much stay in the same place, so people could travel. But once again, when we get into the Four Corners states, it opens up pretty nicely. Texas is a little bit more fitting in with the average cloud weather. So just think about those conditions and how you would handle them if you have responsibilities for things like public meetings, public events, or for travel or other things. Now we take a look at the upcoming eclipse, and here we're dealing with a lot more weather because we're into a relatively cloudy time of year. And once again, we see the trend from Mexico toward the northeast over Canada. It's a progressive deterioration in the eclipse or the cloud cover prospects. If you're going to be in Texas, you want to be as close as you can to the Mexican border and probably favor the north side of the eclipse track. But when you translate that into actual events, here we were last year, and most people were quick to point out to me that my cloud charts wouldn't have worked at all in this kind of a situation. Everybody's going to leave Texas and head toward the northeast, even in pretty unfavorable places. Maine's still got its bad reputation. But the rest of it looks pretty good. And this would be relatively easy for people to move. I know a lot of people on the solar eclipse message list have booked multiple motels along the track, and they're going to pick their situation or their location according to the situation. Over here in the lower right, we have a cloud cover conditioned, and Houston had rain showers at the time. So just think about how you would handle things. But then go back into 2022 and take a look at the cloud cover. We're back into something a little more climatological. But we see down there in the lower right, St. Louis, for people traveling in, has got light snow showers and 7 kilometer visibility. Indianapolis has snow showers. There's 5 to 7 kilometers visibility in Columbus in moderate snow, rain showers, and so on. So you have to be able to plan for an event that gets clouded out if you are handling. So that should, then we get into a situation like this where everybody shares in the bad weather except some of the folks in the central part of the eclipse. The TRW symbols, those mean that there are thunder showers in that area. So not only do we have to deal with snow in the more northern parts, but we also have to deal with convective weather. That would be a tough eclipse. And only a few people would have a free ride at. At the same time, a little red arrow points to a thunderstorm that was actually producing a tornado. And you can see in the bottom there are the warning areas that were issued at eclipse time on a radar image of what it looks like. So think about how you would deal with those sort of things if you have responsibilities. About all I want to say with that, a little of my thoughts about it, which are sort of self-evident. You can absorb them or ignore them as your circumstances and your want is. But it's hard to anticipate what the human being will do. A lot of people under that circumstance of the very heavy cloud will probably just choose to stay home and skip on their travel plan. Others will make massive changes to it.
Yeah, so we'll have time at the end for questions if that's okay. And those of you who are here in person should also feel free to grab any of our presenters, ask for their contact information. Everybody is nice. This is one of the communities where just every single person I've encountered is just lovely, and giving of their own time and expertise to share here. Okay, I'd like now to bring up Kate Russo, please, who's going to give us some lessons learned from experiences, especially vis-a-vis the April 2023 eclipse in Australia. Kate.
Hello, Zoom. So I'm going to talk a bit about the hindsight lessons learned from previous eclipses, but also some of the things that played out in Australia. So who went to Australia? Can you just show of hands? Oh, amazing. And who tried to go but wasn't able to get there? Oh. Very tricky, lots of logistics. And so today I'm just going to go through, and I don't want to sound critical, but in a 7-minute talk, it's really hard to talk about everything. So I'm just going to narrow down on one of the key issues that I think happened that really impacted the outcomes. We didn't get anywhere near the numbers of people on a normal tourist season. That was actually really quite significant. So let's delve into it to see what happened.
It's the down arrow.
I can't even see whether that's.
You can feel it, it's got a little dimple.
Because you're from Australia.
Thanks, Stuart. There you go.
So was that it?
Just push one up.
Okay, so fundamentally, I think one of the issues that happened with this eclipse was that everything came from a risk perspective. And I've been traveling to eclipses all around the world for the past 2 decades. And I don't think I've ever experienced something that has been so risk focused, apart from China in 2009. And there are reasons why this focus was on risk. And because whenever something happens, so I'm a psychologist by background, and whenever something happens, you've got 2 ways of dealing with it. You can see it as a threat or an opportunity. And all of you in this room see this as an opportunity. The eclipse is coming, it's great for your region. But for some circumstances, it can be actually overwhelming with what needs to be planned for. And so some of the circumstances in this eclipse actually meant that they were so focused on the risks, they really didn't look at any other element to it. And that's backwards.
Oh, the arrow.
Yeah.
It's hard to see it. It does have a little dimple on it to help.
It's that one.
Wow, wow.
All right, so the context of this risk, where it came from, I mean, you know, we just came out of, I don't know if you know how significantly impacted Australia was, not in terms of COVID cases, but we were one of the most locked down countries in the world. And our international borders were closed for 2 years. I missed 2 total solar eclipses because of not being able to get out and get back in. So I missed 2020, where I was actually leading a fully booked tour, and I missed 2021, where I was due to be on board a cruise ship to Antarctica, and I'm really gutted about that. But that's the context. And also within that, the states were closed as well. And Western Australia, and I'm going to say WA from now on, so it's Western Australia, not Washington. They were one of the last states to open up their borders in February 2022. And so you can see that when they started looking at logistics, you know, is it going to happen again? Are we going to have to close down? You know, are decisions going to be made like this again? It was very difficult to make plans. Back. And there were circumstances of this path. So for those who are not familiar, the path of totality only made landfall in 3 locations. One in the westernmost tip of Western Australia, the second in West Papua, and the third in Timor-Leste. And the best weather, according to wonderful Jay here, was obviously from land on that westernmost peninsula. So that's where everybody wanted to be to see it on land. Now, the eclipse happened on 20th of April. That is our wet season, our cyclone season. And so that was a real threat, and that was part of the planning. And in fact, we did have a category 5, the highest rated cyclone. Cyclone Ilsa impacted the coast much further north. It just shows you that the same group planning the eclipse was actually having to plan for that as well. It happened in the middle of the school holidays, Easter period. And if you ask any Australian, Easter holidays and school holidays means camping. We love getting out there, getting out in nature. And so this region is actually very popular, and it's peak tourist season at that point in time. The population of Exmouth is 2,800 people. And when they started to open up their, just before the borders opened, there was a rush of people, domestic travellers within Western Australia, rushed to Exmouth, and they had 20,000 visitors in the previous years. And so it's come to a point where it's almost unsustainable anyway. There are lots of issues with not enough housing, staff, It's a conservation area, it's really very fragile. And so already there's a problem with over tourism. So they were expecting the typical peak season visitors, as well as an unknown amount of eclipse chasers. And initially the figures were put out to be 50,000, which was very excessive. But you can see why this little community in the Shire of Exmouth said, we can't do this without state government support. So right from the start, you really didn't get that community ownership of how it was going to go, how it was going to play out. But boy, did they have some really good ideas about that, what they wanted to do. And I was doing some work with the Chamber of Commerce, and they were really passionate about trying to get that message out of sustainable tourism and looking after the environment. So that's what they wanted the messaging to be, and it was a bit different in the end. And so, no, still go back. That's too busy. No. So what happened was the Department of Tourism took ownership of moving things forward, and then but there was a little bit of a leadership gap for a while, and in that time the accommodation providers just made their own decisions about pricing. And I won't go into the detail, but it really outpriced everything and everybody. Tour groups couldn't afford it. Most eclipse chasers were many eclipse chasers who booked early were price gouged. But planning continued. And then because the focus was on risk, there was a feeling that a lot of the stakeholders, there wasn't a lot of the accountability if something went wrong. So a decision was made that to increase the governance of managing the risk for this eclipse, that it had to be all within the government departments, state government departments. So it was then coordinated by a group called JETSI, and there were 22 government officials, groups, all coming together. It was the largest project management across government that they had ever done, to the project managers' understanding. So it was a huge undertaking. And I will show you the next slide in a minute, not yet. But what's important is that happened in around October last year. And it really then changed it formalized things, and it made the governance processes quite clear. But it meant that there was structure on structure on structure on structure. And then it changed the way the stakeholders were able to be involved. That is very busy. If you just press it one more time, the arrow will go up and down. And what you see here is that this is all of the meetings and groups, and the communication was really excellent within these structures. And they were able to move mountains, and they planned some amazing things. But the two groups over at the side is the stakeholder reference group, and that's where I was part of. And these are all the stakeholders on the ground, people from the community, the shires, and then the senior officers forum. So these are the people who were experts who were giving advice about how things should be. And, you know, one of the findings of my white papers, because I use all the hindsight lessons from the past to inform about processes that we can use and apply for future eclipse planning. And we know that, you know, you have to assemble your team. You have to make sure that you've got people on your team who've done this before, experienced this before. And for whatever reason, we weren't able to feed information in the right way. We just felt we didn't really have a voice when the messaging started to be a little bit incorrect. And that's why there were some things that were going on which were really quite puzzling and that we really felt frustrated about. And many of you in this room probably were writing furious letters, and there were lots of difficult conversations. Organise their tours, and who just was really struggling with things. So a decision was made that instead of encouraging people to get into the path of totality, because it was called the Ningaloo Eclipse, and that was the name of the website, they actually changed it to Solar Eclipse, and they wanted to make sure that they didn't have that rush of people to the path. And that meant that messaging about getting into the path of totality wasn't really clear. It was very confusing. And if you see this map that's drawn, that was released, this is the official media kit I sent out the year before the eclipse on the anniversary. you will see that it's saying the total solar eclipse viewing locations, and they've got them all along those blue points, all along, instead of encouraging people to get into the path of totality. There were many other issues, and I won't go into it, but people may be aware of the eye safety, and the official guidance under the Chief Health Officer was that the solar eclipse glasses were not safe and that you shouldn't view it directly, even during totality. And there was some language that was happening. So we were starting to see these communities, there's 99% total eclipse or 95% totality. But these are actually factually incorrect things, and it was really frustrating not to be able to be involved, but not to be able to have that voice or have any influence. And that was the second learning hindsight lesson, that if you're planning and you're getting repeated messages that there's something wrong, you really need to listen. And I think it was quite frustrating for some of us, many of us. And you want to, but it's important to still be part of that process, but frustrating when those messages weren't getting through. So always pivot, you have to take on board what you see, the feedback that you get. So the eclipse happened and it was wonderful and awesome. I'd love to talk more about it, but I won't. But the on-the-ground experience was really very positive. People were raving about it. It was amazing. Logistically, everything went smoothly on the ground on the day. No major incidents. It was a real fantastic thing. But there was one comment that was repeatedly coming up again and again in the forums and social media chats. And do you know that comment was? Where's all the people? They didn't get, they were expecting crowds of people driving up. They were expecting inundation of these areas, and that didn't happen. So here's the numbers. For that period, they got 15,700 people visiting the town and the Shire, with 3,000 coming in during the day. So you remember I said before that just the previous peak visitor numbers was 20,000. So that was lower. They got lower than the peak visitor numbers. There were many empty hotel rooms. And I'm going to say something, and the eclipse chasers who tried to get in, who were price gouged, are going to be very upset when I say this, that there was no accommodation provider within the path that was fully booked. Right? Visitor numbers were lower in the normal season. The whole school holiday period for the community actually was down in terms of their visitor numbers. That really does impact upon the community. And there's a bit of reputational damage that's happening too. And unfortunately, the community itself is actually, because they're associated with the eclipse, it's organized. And logistically and event-wise, it actually was so smooth. And there's so many things that I would want to say that it went really well. So I don't want it to seem that it's all negative, because it wasn't. But it's certain to say that there were many missed opportunities. And I don't have time to go through all those two final points, but there's a lot more to be said. So we're still gathering the impact data. Questionnaires are being done. Final reporting should be happening in August. And I'm still doing all my hindsight interviews with lessons learned. I think the thing is, it's really important for Australia because we have 5 total solar eclipses in 15 years. So, you know how you guys have been, all focus has been on the US? Well, and Michael Ziller from Great American Eclipse, what are you going to do? So it's really important that we learn these lessons. All the information's there, the resources are there. We just need to make sure that we apply it in the way that it needs to be. So here are my details, and anyone can make contact, and I'm happy to talk to people about the resources and share information. And as a final thing, can I just do a quick video of excitement?
Sure.
So because we've got to be excited. We're all sitting there, just been very tired. It's not people to show their excitement about how exciting this is. You've got Albuquerque and the total eclipse next year. So, how excited are you in Albuquerque that eclipses are coming? Awesome. Thank you.
Kate is master on social media too, so I definitely advise following her on Facebook and all the other media. You'll also get a chance to hear again from Kate in the next plenary session. Do we have Chris's information? Can we get Chris in from NASA?
I thought it was Janet next.
Kristen Erickson. So we do Janet next, sorry, I can't see what I'm doing. Wonderful. Okay, so coming up next by YouTube is Janet Ivey from Janet's Planet. You may remember her from the PBS show Janet's Planet. And so she helps with Nashville, and she's recorded a marvelous 6 minutes lessons learned from Nashville.
Yeah, no, it's not that. Okay, just give us that technical difficulty.
No problem.
Spend the time reading your email.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's all that porn.
I'm an administrator, my email is pretty long. Yes.
What's this?
That's the one.
Everything's online.
Um, Okay, so we're gonna pivot just a little bit. Next it was supposed to be Janet, but we have Kristen Erickson from NASA, and so I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that she can share hers.
Yeah, you want to hit that multiple participants thing.
And Kristen. Kristen, you can share slides if you need to.
Wait.
Okay.
Somebody else can figure it out. You don't need to keep repeating this. There.
And we do have microphones here that are picking up stuff, so so it says it's starting sharing the screen, it's just taking a really long time. Talk amongst yourselves. Now, can we hear Chris?
Volume's full.
Oh,
Yeah,
she's
you should
muted.
unmute, Kirsten.
You should be able to unmute her.
Well, I don't think she's ready.
She's unmuted. No, unmute. Okay. Can we hear you? Okay. Right now, Kristen, I don't hear anything from you.
Maybe we have to share our speaker? Like activate our speaker?
It's already on, I think. I'll check.
I feel like I saw Rick putting it down before.
I know.
You see her?
Well, I put it on speaker, but she's not speaking, so it hasn't.
I can't hear us either.
Can you hear someone else on Zoom?
Hey there, this is Dan. If you click on the up arrow by mute, under select a microphone, double check which mic you are using.
I just did that and it's on the right speaker now.
No, for Kristen.
Oh, it needs to be.
Okay, how about now?
There you are.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
All right,
Teamwork.
nice job. Really good. All right, now part of what I am also trying to do, because bear with me just a minute. Let me see how I do mine. Because I want to go full screen, but the Zoom is hiding that ability, so. What I may just do.
The presentation icon at the bottom right next to the slider, it'll go into present mode. Yeah, that one.
Okay, got you. Thank y'all. How about that? Yay. All right, thank you, everybody. It takes a village, and that's exactly what happened in 2017. So in, gosh, it was about 2014, maybe 2015, is when I first heard about the opportunity of the 2017 total solar eclipse that would come across the country for the first time in almost 100 years. And so I led the team back in 2017, and the person that is in my role now is Dr. Kelly Corrick. If she's in the room, please raise your hand, stand up, take a bow. She's been working tirelessly. And others that should be in the room too is Dr. Alex Lockwood, certainly, you know, working with the AAS team of Angela and Rick and others. It's just been a joy. Michael Kirk is also instrumental. So let me get moving here because I know we have just a little bit of time. On my cover slide, you can see kind of how we've tried to tie the branding in from the 2017 to now. And it's all through the eyes of NASA. Now, obviously, this is the NASA funded type of work, but you see that we have actual intentionality in what we're trying to do. So if, you know, the AV goes south or not, top 4 takeaways from my presentation today is, first of all, just have fun. If you set the stage as the leaders of having fun with this event, creativity and joy will follow. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Set priorities early and have them guide your decisions. It doesn't help to have priorities if you're not going to use them in your decision-making process. Also, don't assume they know, and they being anyone. Explain, train, and attain that knowledge. And then also keep the before and after in mind in all your efforts. So what do I mean by these? So for those of you that saw me and may see me, you know, after I stopped sharing my screen, I am wearing one of my favorite Eclipse t-shirts. It's an image of a kitty cat with Eclipse glasses. This is from Oregon, where I was. And it's actually, it's shocking that I can still fit into it post-pandemic, actually. But I was excited when I dug it out to wear it with you all today. And so, you know, when somebody likes this event so much that they actually have, you know, these really fun t-shirts made, that says a lot. And so another thing that I wanted to show you, and I'm not sure if the audio rather will go through, but you should still get the gist. And so if someone could tell me if if the audio goes through, if not, I'll narrate. Oops, let me go back. It'll work. So if the three people in the corner, if you can give a thumbs up if you can hear it, Noah? You cannot, okay, so I'll go ahead and narrate. So Noah, we have all these baseball fans at NASA, and Noah Petro is currently the program scientist for Artemis 2 and 3, which is going back to the moon. But you see him now in his true spirit, which is a baseball fan. He was in Salem, Oregon, and he was at the Volcano Baseball Stadium. So we did a double header. So Eclipse Fest baseball to Dr. Paul Hertz, who is the head of astrophysics at the time. He's in South Carolina at the River Dog Stadium in Charleston, which also was in the pad. I mean, just the fact that he caught a baseball, just makes me giggle to this day. But he talks about how we're having this doubleheader across the country, and we just had a lot of fun with it. So I wanted to share this with you all as an example of some of the creative things that happened. So moving on to the next takeaway. So when we started this endeavor in the 2015 timeframe, we had a goal of just making it the most holistic approach we possibly could. I excavated this early graphic just to kind of show all the different spectra of the sun, but also what we were trying to achieve. But what do you do with something like this? Well, you put your priorities together. And these are the priorities for the 2023-2024 that are absolutely similar to what we did in 2017, except for the second one, broadening participation. Broadening participation is so critical for this type of times that we live in. So what we're trying to do, what Dr. Cork is doing, it's not just the Western approach, but it's all the non-Western and all the different cultures and the arts, the science, the ethics, bringing everything into it in this time frame. But as you can see, those priorities are still so important, with safety being number one. And the previous speaker also alluded to that as well. So I was happy to see that. And these are the things that inform our decisions. I should have probably numbered these because maybe it's safety number one and then the rest dependent, but I would say they probably are in pretty good order. Okay, moving on. This is a video that talks about don't assume they know. So this is a video from the G3. My boss and the acting head of NASA was in the aircraft. They were flying over the Pacific Ocean. So they were the first eyes of NASA. We actually had a broadcast team on the plane with them, and they were watching as well as downstreaming and narrating exactly what was happening, not only from a engagement standpoint, but from a science standpoint as well. Now, one of the things that was so exciting about this video from my boss was that he shared that this was the first eclipse that he had ever seen after being an expert in the field for 25 years. He is a heliophysicist, but this was his first solar eclipse that he had ever seen. And the enthusiasm in his voice was just extraordinary. And so I always like to show this video because even though, I worked for a preeminent expert, you can't assume they know. I learned this very, very well from my friend, Rob Semper at the Exploratorium. And so who are they? They is everybody. When you go into a conversation, and I will share, I had no idea what an eclipse was when I started this. I had a similar sort of idea, but I didn't know what it was. And when somebody is in the room with a NASA official, they're not going to raise their hand and ask a question, so you have to build into your materials just those definitions. Make sure you explain things. I'll give another example. When I was, looking at all, I was doing my research and looking at all these videos and things, And all the videos had the eclipse going from left to right across the sun. And so I just so happened to ask a friend of mine, Doug Duncan, and he says, no, it goes from right to left. What you're seeing are the videos, and they're in reverse. And I am so glad I asked, because here we were putting together the how-tos, the what to expect, all of those flyers and NASA how-tos, and that would have been a major fail if we had not, I had not asked that very simple question of, which way does the sun, does the moon go across the sun again? So I give you these 3 examples to please, don't assume they know. And when you're going in with a whole group of folks with those solar glasses, don't assume they know how to put them on. You have to practice, train like an astronaut. Make sure that they can come back and explain it back to you so that they can attain that knowledge. Okay, moving on quickly. Just to kind of set the stage, yes, 2017 was a really big deal. Over 215 million people watched in person, which is over 88% of the US adults at the time. It was NASA's biggest digital event ever, the biggest government event in the history of analytics, comparable to Super Bowls, Masters, golf tournaments, etc. So yes, it was a very big deal. And I have in the backup charts, for those that I saw some of the other speakers, some of the analytics on the social and the web for you all to see some of the next topic, which is the before and after. So one of the things that's really important is to be able to show, using data to show what it is today and then what happened after. So for example, we had an infographic that we put together. We had 14 different science platforms that were called to action, everything from our international friends with SOHO, International Space Station, our own satellites, ones that we have with NOAA, like the Discover. So we had 14 different science observation platforms. And then after we got all that data back, we updated the infographic to show the snapshots with the web links of what the real data and the real imageries showed. So this is one example of that before and after. Another example is when we talked about the web and I have it in the backup. Before the eclipse, we had maybe about 50% of engagement on some of our platforms. After the eclipse, it went up to 94%. Typically, we had more of a male audience. For the eclipse, it was 50-50 male and female. And so you get the idea real quickly how you can show the impact, as a previous speaker mentioned, if you think in the terms of before and after. Now, one of the things that was a lessons learned was for our in-person events, we were in over 120 official locations. They were official NASA. But when we were done, man, we were exhausted. We were done. But our audiences weren't. They wanted more. They were like, okay, what's next? What do we do next? We're so excited about this. And frankly, we were not prepared for that, for those in-person community audiences. And that's why Dr. Corrick is taking such a different approach to have a more sustainable plan post-event because of what we didn't do in person that we should have done better. And so just to conclude, I just want to repeat again, truly have fun with this, set the priorities early, don't assume they know, and keep the before and after in mind in all of your efforts. And so with that, again, here's Kelly's contact information. And we also have Dr. Michael Kirk, who does a lot of the, he's doing a lot of the project-based, if you will, the outreach, the engagement, and I think several of his teams might be there as well. I'm going to stop sharing and then I'm going to turn it back over to our hosts. Thank you. Oh, you can see me now. Okay, so here's my shirt. I don't know if you could see the kitty cat with the glasses. So
Getting the YouTube from Janet together. I just want to say to the crowd here, so I asked everybody if you had swag from your local community already prepared to bring it if possible. I know a number of you have done that. If you have not yet put it, it's over in the second classroom where we're having the plenary sessions. And we have what I know about laid out already, and we'll be bringing those over to the reception tonight. So make sure you have your business cards because we'll be drawing some winners for that. But swag to get you guys excited about and inspired about what you could replicate in your region. Okay, Janet.
Yeah, we're good. Let me just share it first.
Hey, this is Dan Sternman again. We can't hear the video that is being shared right now.
I didn't hear what Dan was
Dan
saying.
said they can't hear it. So
Oh,
here's
okay.
with sound. So if you unshare again. And then share.
For screen share.
Yeah, screen again. And then there's on the lower left hand corner. There's sound. Yeah.
Optimize for video clip, also optimize for video clip. Thank you.
Let me step back.
Hi, everybody. I'm Janet Ivey. I was the Eclipse consultant for the Adventure Science Center. I got hired on about 9 months before the actual eclipse in August of 2017. But I had been stamping my feet very loudly going, do you guys know what's coming? Are you getting prepared? What are you doing to prepare for this event? Nashville and surrounding counties. And the truth of it is they had just never seen anything like this before. So it was a little bit of a hard sell. Probably about 6 months before the actual event, I attended an AAS meeting in Columbia, South Carolina. We got even more pumped and was like, we got to get this thing rolling. So when you think about Nashville, you kind of like also think about Middle Tennessee and those surrounding counties. Early estimates, well, we may get, 100,000 visitors. We might get maybe, $5 to $10 million in revenue. And then all of a sudden, this article came out 10 days prior to the eclipse. Everybody was kind of going, oh, this eclipse thing, people are finally talking about it. Montgomery County, Clarksville, Tennessee, where Fort Campbell is based, all of a sudden they had 2,700 hotel rooms entirely sold out. People were renting their homes. Campsites were all filled. By the time, by mid-June of 2017, there was not a campsite in Tennessee that was available. And so people were like, oh, there might actually be something to this. Again, Nashville proper thought maybe 100,000 visitors, maybe up to $10 million in revenue. And then what it came down to is that it's probably closer to, several million people were in Middle Tennessee, and revenue was 29.6 million in direct visitor spending, because people didn't just come for the eclipse, they came for the entire weekend. If we look at the numbers that were happening at the Adventure Science Center, now remember, this is not due to me at all, it was an entire team, but there was an earned PR value at almost $17 million. And the center itself donated thousands of eclipse glasses to area schools and Middle Tennessee schools, but they sold over 300,000 pairs of eclipse glasses. So if you're just thinking about kind of like a fundraiser for your institution, that alone, think about it. Even if you sell them for $1 a piece, that's quite an amazing revenue generator just right there. There was an Eclipse Festival that began on that Saturday, and truly the line just trying to buy glasses ran around like for 3/4 of a mile. There were 17,000 visitors to that festival. The outside festival was free. We had over 50 vendors. You could purchase a ticket to go inside into the center. Many people opted to do that. It was, 98 degrees in the shade with probably 110 humidity index, but it was an amazing event. Over 17,000 visitors to that Eclipse Festival. Now, there were probably starting early that year, around that 6-month mark, we had lots of Eclipse trainings. Lots of the Adventure Science Center educators were going out into the community, training teachers, training librarians, training anybody that wanted to know more about the Eclipse. The Adventure Science Center also produced lots of Eclipse TV segments, and almost 2 million households viewed museums' Eclipse education spots during that time. We would hold stakeholder meetings, getting all the people in our city, whether that was like people from the Parks and Rec Department or Homeland Security or the mayor's office or the people over at the zoo or whomever would listen and would want to. We said, hey, please come and see about having these events. The city itself did not take on planning a huge Eclipse event. They let the city itself be the event. So you had Acme Feed and Seed having an event on their rooftop with an astrophysicist. So that was not really my job, but it sort of became my mission. Like, who wants to do an event? How can I help you? Who do we need to get? The kind of like our AAA baseball team filled their stadium, had the principal investigator from the NASA Juno mission as a speaker, had lots of activities going. They saw the eclipse, they cleared the stadium, and then they played a baseball game. So again, the zoo, we ended up getting some people over there from NASA. At the very last minute, the Grand Ole Opry called and says, hey, can we get somebody literally 2 weeks out when they start to and I'm going, and I'd been saying, hey, you need to plan a concert. You need to be doing this. What was another, I think, gaffe in our city was that the beautiful, amazing botanical gardens at Cheekwood Museum is like, well, we're closed on Monday. We won't be having an event. Yeah. And again, I felt, in my not so humble opinion, that was short-sighted. Just put this in your tool belt. Go ahead and make your estimations about how many you think are going to come to your area, how many hotels, how much economic impact you are expecting at present, and then keep an accounting of what it actually is and what you actually do for your area, and that can be the proof to your community. Yes, were all of these things that we did and all of the many meetings we had, were they worth it? And you're going to go, yes, in fact, $29.6 million worth it, as was the case in Middle Tennessee. If you have any questions for me, you can submit those to Janet at janetsplanet.com. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Okay, great. So that's actually the perfect segue. So in Rochester, New York, the first thing that I did after 2017, having seen Nashville's success, was I traveled to Nashville in October of 2017 to hear, all right, how'd y'all do what you did? And then in early 2019, at the 5-year out mark, we had Janet in Rochester for 2 solid days of Eclipse training for the different sectors. And yes, people thought I was nuts. Trying to plan, I said, 5 years out, I was planning for 2 years in advance of that. But Janet was marvelous in helping us mobilize our different sectors because she had already been there. One of the things that a number of them mentioned was that in order to, what you need to do is measure impact, but you have to set yourself up to be able to measure it, right? It can't be an afterthought. So our next speaker is also from Rochester, Carrie Falzone, who set up, she designed our Rochester Eclipse 2024.org site She's also running an eclipsemerchandise.com site that was started primarily to help sell the artwork of Tyler Nordgren, Eclipse artist, and that has bloomed. But Carrie's going to talk to us a little bit about how everybody needs to have an online strategy, and now is the time to start that. Here are the kinds of things you need to measure future impact.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me today. And everybody on Zoom. I'm gonna pick up where Janet and Kristen did such a great job. My presentation also includes awareness, but I only have so much time. So I'm gonna kind of go right through some of that beginning stuff. But truly, you wanna pick your team and don't just think internal team, but also your community. And influencers around the Eclipse, anybody you can pull in that will help you keep your website content going. You want to make sure your goals are, your goals are just a dream with a deadline. So you want to make sure they're attainable and manageable. You have your story and your audience that you can pull from, and to build that content strategy, you know that your story is unique because your community is unique. You want to pick the tools that are good for you. You can do it yourself, or you can bring in a professional to help you, as well as your social media platforms that you choose, and make sure you track everything, because you're going to use it not only for right now going up to the Eclipse, but also beyond for any other events that you have coming in the future. So going through these real quick. So you build your awareness, everything that Kristen and Janet just talked about. You create your advocates. You want to educate your audience, you want to unite your communities, you want to drive acquisitions, whether that's news stream or selling tickets or event attendees. Think about the future. I also want to point out, if you have not picked your URL, make sure that you pick it and it's easily found for your area, and don't pick something general, because you want to make sure people know where they're going and how to get there even online. So before you build your site, and maybe some of this is even for you that do have your sites already going, but you want to make sure that you optimize your site for speed, because if it loads, nobody's going to stay, or it loads slowly, no one's going to stay on it. You want to optimize for search, so do some Google keyword planning through the Google AdWords and set your metadata. You want to make sure your site is ADA compliant. This is the making sure that it's available for all disabilities, and you want to do your research on that, because if you get federal funding, your site needs to be ADA compliant. You want to optimize your site for mobile, so make sure it's viewable on all responsive sizes and browser types. You want to make sure you have a consistent brand style, makes it fun, gives it a personality, makes your site easy to navigate. You want to have a clear call to action. And that means that you tell them where to go and what you want them to do. And so it helps people navigate. Before you launch, keep these things in mind. Test everything. Test videos, test different browsers and devices. Create a custom 404 page, because you're bound to have links that don't work and links that are coming into you that don't work. And you want to make sure that people end up knowing where they're going if they get to your site, not just say that the site's broken. You want to include all your legal pages. Don't forget that, because the most important reason an organization have terms and conditions are to limit the organization's liabilities, protect the site's intellectual property, and ensure that the users comply with the site's terms. You want to make sure you set up the web analytics. That's Google Analytics, and that'll help you with your data tracking. You want to submit your sitemap to Google Search Console. So it's a sitemap.xml file, and it just makes Google say, oh, this is a new site, or this is a site. And even if you've done that, you want to make sure you check it to make sure that it still knows what your site's up to. It's good to add it every once in a while. And security is key. So make sure you have, so you don't have any issues with malware, viruses, hackers. Look to install firewall of some sort to protect against these things. So things to know after you launch. Set up backups. You'd hate to have your site get attacked or have an issue and you lose everything. So you want to make sure you have regular backups. Usually that's through your hosting company.
It's just easier to have them automated instead of manual. Set up your business social pages. A lot of times when you have somebody internally setting up your social pages, they'll connect it to their personal page. You want to make sure it's a business social page. It just makes it much easier. Spread the word socially. So as soon as you get your site up, you want to let all your friends know, your connections know, you send it out to PR, those types of things. And then create more content. Once your site's up, you don't want it to become stale. So keep that content coming. And again, touch on those influencers in the Eclipse community, partner with other Eclipse websites. It can help you keep your content fresh. Just make sure you give them credit. Invite others to link to you. Nurture the relationships with other organizations, community influencers, and areas. It builds your sites. All the press. One of the things that you can do is make a press page and do a short introduction about the site, an event to get the word out. But here's a tip. A great PR is to sign up to be a source for HARO, which is Help a Reporter Out. So at helpareporter.com, journalists go there, Reuters, Chicago Tribune, New York Times, ABC News Times, and more will look for you to be a source for the Eclipse, and they'll be able to reach out. You just have to check your website or your email on a regular basis to see if they've contacted you. So all the different social platforms can be very overwhelming. This just gives you an idea of how many people touch on this one. And if you're going to invest your time, maybe you don't want to do all of them, but reasons why you'd be on Facebook. 3 billion monthly users. YouTube is 74% of Americans are on YouTube. Instagram, 1 billion. So as Facebook is 40 and over, Instagram 40 and younger. TikTok, if you're going for those young kids, I put that down there. So if you can't handle everything and you want to look in, a tip is to go to hootsuite.com. You can push one post and it'll go to, I believe, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. So it's a great place to make it just more easy to get the word out. When you plan your social media content, make sure that you keep these things in mind. You get the attention with bold headlines, eye-catching pictures, mesmerizing reels, keep it fun. Interest, interesting facts, tips to know, helpful education. You get a desire, what you want them to do for your offerings, whether you're pushing them for something and to take action, to share the content, visit your website, buy a ticket, whatever you want to know, but keeping the AIDA in mind helps you know what to push out there. And then here's a tip, don't forget hashtags. A custom hashtag can help brand, but it also helps people find you. And I think one of the tips that I forgot before is grammar is important. So there's a site called grammarly.com that can help just download it to your computer. It makes it very easy. It corrects everything through emails and website content, keeps things. So unless you want those English teachers to contact you and tell you that something's wrong in a post that you sent out, it's much easier to do that. So other online marketing tools. One of the big things for communities, I create your Google business page because people forget you can post your events right to your Google business page and they show right up in the Google stream. Google AdWords, make sure your ads are specific to the page you are sending your visitors to, which will help your campaign have success. And email marketing, almost everybody uses email, it's cost effective, and it's a great way to get your message out real time. So keeping your an email database is very good. And then here's the tip. Google will give you $500 in ad credit after you spend $500 to help you get started. Or if you're a 501c, look into Google ad grants because Google is literally giving you $1,000 a month to spend on marketing and fundraising via pay-per-click. So if you're a 501c, definitely look. Okay, so track your progress, things to use. Google Analytics, we've already talked about. Very easy to connect with. Google Search Console, more on a functional. It will tell you if anything's going on with your website and if Google is having any trouble crawling it or it's having any readability issues, it's very good to keep your site so you know everyone is having no problems getting through there. If you have time, Hotjar is a great, it offers heat maps, it also offers video recordings of people using your website and their experience of them actually going through your site. So it offers free up to 35 sessions a day. And then create UTM codes. Setting up UTM tracking and URL links you use will help your marketing campaign so you truly know where people are coming from. And then here's a tip, setting Google alert mentions to your website name and specific keywords you're tracking can let you know exactly what people are saying about your website or specific keywords. So that's also another free thing that is offered. So I know I rushed through everything. I actually had about 10 more slides on the original version, so I'd love to talk to people more, or feel free at carrieverticalinsight.com, and that's what I have.
When she said, how long do I have? I said, 7 minutes. And she said, she really did call out a lot of also valuable information, and you should definitely get in touch with Carrie. She is a generous and knowledgeable person.